Maties! Welcome to Sea of Thieves. This is Damron with Trash Ass Gamers. In this video, we're going to be talking about the basics of Sea of Thieves in the first of a 5-part series. We're going to be starting with basic essentials with part 1, what you need to know before you set sail for the first time. As we progress through this series, we're going to get a little more advanced until we get all the way to the end, in which I'll talk about some more advanced tips for some more experienced sailors. Now, the first videos, again, if you are experienced in Sea of Thieves, this video is not really going to be for you. This first part is really geared towards players that are just getting into the game and just getting out onto the seas. So let's get started. There's 3 different boats you can pick when you first start the game: a galleon, a brigantine, and a sloop. The galleon is going to be a 4-man crew. It's going to have 3 masts to operate, and I don't really recommend you go into this boat with anything less than 3 players. The next boat is the brigantine, which has 2 masts that you need to control, and this has a max crew size of 3. And again, it's a little faster than a sloop, not as fast as a galleon, but I wouldn't go into it with less than 2 crew to make your life easier. And the final boat that you can choose is the sloop. A lot of videos of solo slooping, right? This is really the solo boat, but it does have a maximum crew capacity of 2. And the sloop is actually a really good boat to just kind of sail the seas and learn how to sail. Often when new players come in, they say, hey, what should I do? I say, hey, go play solo, hop on a sloop, and just sail around. That's one of the best ways to learn how to sail in this game. So once you select your boat, then you have the option to select an open crew or a closed crew. And the difference between those is, pretty obvious, but if you select an open crew, any crew person or sailor that picks open crew can join your game automatically. Whereas if you create a closed crew, only players that you invite and players that are on your friends list could actually join you once the game starts. And then finally, once you decide which one of those you'd like to do and you enter the game is always going to start you at an outpost. And the outposts are several throughout Sea of Thieves, but it's going to start you in this building. And on this starting island, the first thing you really want to do is go to all these barrels that are lootable, and you walk up to them, you'll see a command that you can open the barrel. And the 3 main items that you're really looking to get are fruit, wood, and cannons. There's a 4th item, bait, but the main items that you're really going to need to sail, again, are cannon, wood, and the fruit. And we'll talk about all the different items in the basics part 2 in the next video. But just keep in mind, before you set sail, make sure you go around the island you start on and loot all the items that you can. So let's go ahead and go to the boat. We're going to talk about the different types of things that you may need to know while you're sailing the seas in regards to the boat. And the first is kind of the directionalities of what some players may use when you're in a game and they're talking and they say things, right, you may not be aware. And so the first thing is just directionality of the ship, right? So if you look to the left of the ship, that's also the port side of the ship. The front of the ship is the bow of the ship, and the right side is the starboard side of the ship, and the back is the stern of the ship or the aft. So some players may use that terminology when you're playing, so go ahead and familiarize yourself with that when you're out on the seas. Now we're going to use the sloop to kind of showcase all the items that are associated with each ship, but keep in mind all ships have these same items, they just may be located in a slightly different place. And the first thing is the capstan, which is going to control the anchor. And the way you operate this is simply press X on it and you walk around in a circle to raise it, and when you want to lower it, you just press and hold X and it'll drop automatically. Now you can catch these wooden things as it's falling to stop it, and that's something useful in PvP, but we're not going to discuss that here. The next item is obviously the captain wheel. Just keep in mind when you are on the captain wheel, you still can use your right stick to look around the surrounding area. And you also have your own compass on the captain's wheel that's just right in front of you that you can keep an eye on while you're sailing the seas. If you are a crew member who isn't on the captain's wheel, you do have a compass that you can help give directions to your captain in your inventory wheel. And again, we'll talk about all the equipment items in the second part of the basics tutorial, but just for now, know that you all have a compass in your inventory that you can use, and you're going to use that a lot when you're on islands and just sailing around the seas, and the captain's going to have his own. So moving on, the items that we talked about earlier all have an inventory space, and the first one is the Cannonball Crate or the Cannonball Barrel. You can only hold 10 cannonballs in your personal inventory at a time, so when you go to outposts and when you go to islands, you want to stock up on these resources and place the extra ones in your barrel so you can use them later if you get into a firefight or need to repair holes. And here's the wood barrel, has the crossed wood symbol on it. Again, you can only hold 5 pieces of wood in your inventory, so less than the cannonballs, and you're going to want to store the rest in your wood barrel. And then you have the food barrel. You can only hold 5 portions of food in your inventory at a given time. That includes fish and meat, and the rest is going to have to go into your barrel. And next to the food is always the stovetop, and the stovetop is where you're going to cook meat. Cooking fruit, in fact, doesn't do anything. In fact, it'll just waste the fruit. So we'll talk about cooking and health regeneration in the beginner's tips. Also on the ship, you're going to find an ammo chest. We're going to talk about the different weapons in just a moment, but you can only hold 5 bullets at any given time, and anytime you're low on a bullet, just go to the ammo chest, press X, and you're going to refill your inventory. Generally, next to the ammo is your armory, which is going to showcase the 4 different possible weapons that you can carry. The first being the cutlass. I definitely always like to have a sword on me because there's nothing worse than double gunning and running out of ammo. So I always recommend having a sword as one of your 2 weapon options. The next weapon is the flintlock pistol, which is a medium range pistol that does about 50% damage when you hit things. Next up is the blunderbuss, which is a short-range shotgun, can do up to 100% damage if you're point blank. And then finally the eye of the reach, which is a sniper rifle that does about 75% damage on a shot. The next thing to take note of that's going to be on every ship is the map. The map is very critical because in Sea of Thieves there's no HUD. You don't have a direction on your screen telling you where to go. You will frequently have to come to the map and look around, figure out where you need to go, determine your compass direction, and then head in that direction. So zooming in and out will allow you to see the island names, right? There's Crook's Hollow. You can even place markers for your fellow crew members by pressing A or select whichever button you've placed as select if you're PC. And then you can also remove that way marker just by pressing A over the same area. And there is conveniently a little cardinal direction in the bottom right of the map if you happen to walk up to the map, which sometimes happens in a galleon or a bigger boat, and you're looking at it upside down. Again, your directionality is now up in the upper left, so you do have directionality when looking at the map to orient you. Moving on to the captain's table. The captain's table is where you're going to place voyages. And we're going to talk about where you get these voyages in the second part of the basics tutorial. But for now, let's just discuss the table in which you place voyages down. When you place a voyage that doesn't start it, you'll actually need to vote on the voyage to begin it. And a crew can only be on a single voyage from an alliance at a time. Now you can have a Tall Tales and a voyage active at the same time, but in regards to alliance voyages, you can only have one active at a time, and the majority of the crew has to vote on the voyage in order to activate it. So if you're a sloop by yourself, okay, you do it by yourself. But if you have 2 people on your sloop, both people need to vote. If you have 3 people on a brig, at least 2 people need to vote. So keep that in mind when you're placing your voyages down. Now here's your mast. The mast is always going to have or the main mast I should say, should always have a ladder that leads up into the crow's nest. On your brig and your galleon, the secondary masts do not have that. So this is the crow's nest. The crow's nest is going to give you a good vantage point into the surrounding parts of the seas, and you can even use your spyglass to look even further. So in larger crews, it's sometimes a good idea to have someone out there. Keep an eye out for pending threats as you're moving around the seas so you don't get snuck up on. Another thing that's present on all of the boats now on the front are a harpoon on the starboard and the port side. And the harpoons have a lot of different utility in the game now, but for now just know that they are there, and you can do things like pull yourself closer to a dock, you can pull in treasure, you can pull someone out of a galleon, you can do harpoon turns, you can really do a lot with these, and a few of those we're actually going to touch on in the intermediate and advanced section of these tips and tutorials. Finally, we're moving on to the sails. The sails are going to have a sail length and a sail angle. The sail length is going to be noted by obviously saying sail length, but also that anchor, and the sail angle is the levy. So operating this sail length is very simple. Pressing X and using it to go up and down will lower and raise the sail length. For all the sails on a sloop, brig, and galleon, you can operate the sail from the port or the starboard side of the boat. And in fact, if two people operate it at the same time, you can perform whatever action you're doing faster. However, keep in mind you could counteract each other if you're not performing the same exact movement. Setting the sail angle is very important in order to change your ship's speed, and you're going to be doing that using the directionality of the wind. So you have to understand, how do I know the directionality of the wind? Well, there's two ways you can do that. One, you can look up into the sky and you'll see these white lines that are kind of floating in the air. So this one are going a little forward, slightly to the left. So I know that the wind is blowing in that direction. Now, sometimes the game will glitch and something may happen where you're not seeing those wind lines, and a good thing to always have up is a flag. And we're going to talk about alliances in later tutorials, but for now, just the ship flag box, having a flag up is an alternate way to see which way the wind is blowing. So sometimes if those wind signals aren't there, maybe they've glitched out, having that flag up's also going to allow you to see which direction the wind is blowing, and angling the sail in that direction until it's fully bellowed is going to give you the fastest speed that you can attain. Alright, so moving on to the last few things in a ship, you're going to have a brig, which you can lock people in if they're not being nice. You're going to have a barrel of grog to get drunk with your fellow sailors. You have a clothing chest on each ship that's going to allow you to change the cosmetics of your pirate. Keep in mind, these are things that you do have to purchase from the outpost. Again, we'll talk about the different things you can do on the outpost in the basics part 2. And you'll have an equipment chest, which allows you to change the aesthetics of your equipment items, like your compass and bucket and your fishing rod and some of your musical instruments. And then finally, you're going to have a vanities chest, and the vanity chest is going to allow you to change the cosmetics of your eyepiece, your peg leg, even your title, your hair, and all that jazz. So that's basically a overall tutorial of the boat. And so you guys that are coming out new to the seas, I hope you found this helpful. I hope it gave you a little bit of guidance before you drop sails for the first time. You're really going to enjoy this game. Again, the biggest recommendation I can make to new players is to start a sloop and just set sail and kind of sail around and play with the different parts of the ship until you really understand it well. So that's going to end this video. We'll have, this is again part 1 of 5 parts. We're going to have the basics part 2, and then we're going to do beginner tips, intermediate tips, and advanced tips, which hopefully I think some of the more experienced players are really going to enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you out on the seas.